I'm Justin Brady on Drucker Forum TV, and we're still live. Like I said, under 2 hours left now. What an incredible day. And the incredible day continues because now we have Zeynep on the line live. First of all, are you also in Boston, Zeynep? Thanks for joining us.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, because we
Yes.
just talked to Hubert Joly, the former CEO of Best Buy. He's also in Boston.
Yes, and a wonderful leader who had an amazing turnaround at Best Buy.
I think he endorsed your new book. We have that right here
Yes.
if we want to get a tight shot on that. The Case for Good Jobs, which is what we'll be talking about today. I read through it. Incredible book. I just kept doing mental fist pumps as I read through the book. A lot of really good ideas, but sadly, a lot of great ideas that I feel fall on some leadership deaf ears. There's some frustrating stories in there about people that just don't really get it, even though you present this great data and you have great examples. And we'll start with one really odd one that some people confuse paying your employees really well and doing well by your employees, which should seem obvious. It's obvious to you, of course, with ESG. So I was really surprised to see one certain CEO push back on this idea directly to you, saying, oh, well, this is ESG stuff. Why are people making that mistake?
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why they're making this mistake is that they have been running companies for a long time, and they're well aware that paying more alone is not going to drive performance for them. So these leaders, I have a lot of respect for them, for their experience. And I think when we academics come around and tell them messages like, well, just pay your employees more and the world will be a better place, they know that's not true. And pay, so what I argue about in my book is that absence of sufficient pay guarantees high turnover and guarantees poor performance, but pay alone is not going to drive performance. There's an entire system that needs to take place, and that system is combining pay and investment in people with a set of choices that by design improve productivity and contribution of people so that pay investment pays off.
Yeah, I love how you said that, because there have been some people that you mentioned in the book that they think it's as simple. They look at other companies, you mentioned Costco, Trader Joe's, and they think it's this very simple value proposition. And so what they do is they just pay their employees more, they try the experiment and it fails. And your response always is, no, 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 it's not just about improving pay. That's a big part of it, but it's an entire system. And there are 4 aspects to that system, correct?
Yes, there are 4 aspects, and you don't have to be Costco, a warehouse club, to be able to do this. There are a number of companies that I talk about in the book, but what companies like Costco, Trader Joe's, Quick Trip, Mercadona, Four Seasons Hotels, Progress, I can go on and on and on, Toyota Production System in a variety of industries. What they do is first they start with the customer, right? What is it that we're trying to create for the customer? So once they become customer focused, then it's so obvious for them that they have to invest in their workforce. They have to have a stable, motivated, capable workforce that's set to deliver for their customers, and pay has to be a part of it. But what does it take to be able to pay employees more so that they stay with you and they serve the customer well? Well, it requires an entire system, and I talk about 4 elements of that system. One is focus and simplify, standardize and empower. You were just talking about what you learned in previous sessions, and one of them was rules and creativity. So what I found in my research is that this killer combination of combining standardization with empowerment is what creates great outcomes for workers and companies, and cross training and operating with Slack. But fundamentally, these choices together improve productivity of employees and improve their contribution and enable them to serve the customer well.
Yeah, I mean,
And if,
go
your
ahead, go ahead. I cut
and
you
if
off.
your employees are more productive by design, then of course you can pay them more. If your employees are, and their work enables them to do a good job, of course they're more motivated to do a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. The operate with Slack thing, I've got to tell you, is so true, but also funny. And ever since, it's so funny because I was reading your book. It's been a busy November for me. I've been flying a lot, and I was reading your book on all the flights. And so I'm sitting here reading why operating with Slack is so important, as I kept getting delayed over and over and over by an airline that I won't mention. And I'm like, man, I feel like sending your book to the CEO of this company and saying, "I think you need to read Zeynep's book here. I think he can help you out a little bit there, buddy." So the good job system, as you call it, which is great, pushes companies to greatness. It's not really debatable. You have amazing examples of this and research that supports this. But as you say in the book, this is rarely a life and death kind of thing. And so, for that reason, is it rare to see anyone and any leader prioritize this very thing, the good job system, that could make them great?
Yeah, it's not rare because in the last couple of years, there have been multiple companies that went through a whole transformation. From Sam's Club, at the
Mm.
time it was a $60 billion retailer, to 2 units of a restaurant chain. And if you ask me what is common across these companies that were able to prioritize this change, they started with the customer. And they asked, what does it take? First, we want to win with our customers to be able to stay, to be able to grow, to be able to adapt to changes in the market, and to be able to survive. And then the next question was, if we want to win with our customers, can we do that if we don't execute well? And the answer was no. And then the next question was, can we execute well if we have high turnover, if our employees are not set up for success? And again, the answer was no. So that type of logic, starting from customer to operational execution to people, is what enabled them to prioritize this and take on this journey. And once leaders prioritize this, and it takes a lot of conviction, and just your first question was like the leaders who were providing pushback. Some leaders provide pushback, but some of them, for so many of them, it's so obvious
Yeah.
that they do this. And once they have that belief, then the tactical steps of implementation are not so different than any other large system change.
And it does seem like some of the people who do push back, they want proof. They want like, and it's weird. You argue this in the book, and it's an odd question, but they want proof that this innovation that will get somewhere in the future is going to work out. And of course, you tell people like you can't prove innovation up front. And I think you call this spreadsheet thinking, correct?
Yeah, you can't, because you can look at, pay investment alone. You can look at operating with Slack alone. You can look at empowerment alone. And you might conclude, especially, to come to proofs, leaders oftentimes look at historical data and say, what happened the last time we raised pay? What happened the last time we empowered our people, or last time we increased staffing levels? And they look at those decisions in isolation. But the good job system is a bunch of different decisions working together to create outsized returns. I'll give you one
Mm.
example. At Sam's Club, when they looked historically how much they could improve efficiency, it could be 1 or 2%. During the last 3-4 years, they improved it by 20%. And it wasn't just one change or two changes, it was the accumulation of those changes together. And it required not spreadsheet thinking, but systems thinking, thinking that if we want to win with our customers, this is what we need to do. And if we do all of these things together, we're going to create great value.
So there's a really cool quote in this book about we take care of our machines when they break, but and I don't think I have the quote exactly right, but this is generally what it is. We take care of our machines when they break, but not our people. And I would even dare to go a little further and say we're very careful to maintain and properly oil our machines in advance to make sure they don't break and are always running at 100%. But that same exact principle escapes us when it applies to the people that we employ and invest in. So, what are the biggest fears that you've heard from CEOs and leaders on, like, from betting on their people in the form of high pay? Because for some people,
Yeah.
it feels like a bet.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest fear is that the investment is not going to pay off. Right. And I wrote this book to help them less afraid, to show examples from a variety of contexts where this investment did pay off. The other fear is that this type of change is not oftentimes legitimate in the eyes of different stakeholders. The board, the shareholders, they're not asking you questions about what's your employee turnover, how many people from within have you promoted. Other investments in technology, in mergers, acquisitions, they have a lot more legitimacy in the eyes of other stakeholders,
Yeah.
which makes leaders more afraid, because when they go wrong on a technology, they might not be fired, but when they go wrong on this type of thing, they might. And that's another
Interesting.
fear. And I think deep inside, though, Justin, the biggest fear is the inability to count on frontline employees. Because what if they don't work hard? What if they're not able? And that inability to trust frontline employees, that they will come to play, they will, if you invest in them, they will do everything back to pay off that investment. I think that's a big, huge fear.
Yeah, and that's a deadly cycle because when you don't trust employees and when you don't listen to your frontline employees, they tend to act the way you treat them. So if you treat them with disregard, you don't listen to them, they tend to treat you with disregard and don't listen to you. And so it's this deadly cycle that you talk about, is that people tend to not have a lot of faith in their frontline employees, and that faith leads to employees acting exactly the way they thought they would act. And then they actually take more away from them and tighten the barriers a little bit more and the little walls on them a little bit more. And it's just this deadly cycle, and eventually the leader has to be the one to put a stop to it. Last 30 seconds. What most executives have no idea. You just said this, how much churn really costs them. So seriously, last 30 seconds, what is the real cost of churn? Because it doesn't really show up on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I mean, there are direct costs of employee turnover, hiring, onboarding, training, time to full productivity. But the biggest cost of higher turnover is when companies have high turnover, they end up creating an entire system that assumes that people are not capable, because you can't trust employees, you haven't hired the right people, you haven't trained them well, you can't empower them. And the biggest cost is all the mistakes, lost
Mm,
sales, higher
yes.
costs, and inability to serve the customer, and at the end losing market share.
Exactly. That is that's a good way to leave it. Zeynep Ton, president of the Good Jobs Institute and author of The Case for Good Jobs, which is right here. You should pick it up. I'm Justin Brady on Drucker Forum TV.